The black credit card glinted in the billionaire's hand as he watched the small, dirty girl approach his restaurant again. She clutched a baby to her chest, desperation in her eyes that belied her young age. "We'd love to know. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit that like button for more touching stories that will warm your heart." The February rain pelted down mercilessly on Maxwell Reed's Lamborghini as he pulled up to Orium, his five-star restaurant in downtown Manhattan. At 30, he was one of the youngest billionaires in America, having built Reed Technologies from his college dorm room into a tech empire. Success had come easily to Maxwell. Too easily, some might say. Lately, he'd found himself increasingly numb to the world, bored by the predictability of people who only wanted his money or influence. That's when he first noticed her, a small figure huddled against the brick wall near the restaurant's service entrance, a girl no older than 8, with tangled blonde hair and clothes too thin for the bitter New York winter. Most striking was the bundle she carried, a baby barely visible beneath a tattered blanket. Her eyes caught his, neither pleading nor accusing, simply observing with an unsettling wisdom beyond her years. "Sir, your usual table is ready," said Thomas, the maitre d', holding an umbrella over Maxwell as he exited his car. "Who is that child?" Maxwell asked, unable to look away. Thomas glanced over dismissively. "Local nuisance. Been coming around for weeks. Chef Marcus sometimes gives her kitchen scraps if she comes after closing. I've called social services twice, but she disappears before they arrive." Maxwell frowned. "And the baby? Her brother, I believe. Quite unfortunate, but—" "Bring her inside," Maxwell interrupted. Thomas looked scandalized. "Sir, with all due respect, Orium has a strict dress code and reputation to—" "I own the damn place, Thomas. Bring her in now." Minutes later, the girl sat across from Maxwell in his private dining room, her baby brother cradled in her arms. Up close, he could see the exhaustion etched into her young face, the wariness in her blue eyes. The baby, despite their circumstances, appeared relatively clean and cared for. "What's your name?" Maxwell asked. She studied him before answering. "Lily. This is Tommy. He's 1. Where are your parents, Lily?" She tightened her grip on the baby. "Mum's sick. Dad's gone." Maxwell ordered food for them both, simple pasta for Lily, which she ate with measured restraint despite her obvious hunger, feeding small bits to Tommy before taking any herself. "How long since you've eaten?" Maxwell asked. 2 days for me. Tommy had some milk yesterday. I found it." Her matter-of-fact tone disturbed Maxwell more than tears would have. He'd expected a street child to wolf down the food, but Lily ate with surprising dignity, wiping Tommy's mouth between bites. An idea formed in Maxwell's mind, a test of sorts. He'd seen countless adults corrupted by sudden access to wealth. What would this child do? He pulled out his black titanium credit card, the one with no spending limit, and placed it on the table. "Do you know what this is, Lily?" She nodded. "A credit card. Rich people have them. This one is special. It can buy anything you want, as much as you want. No limits." He pushed it toward her. "It's yours for 24 hours. Her eyes widened slightly, the first childlike reaction he'd seen. "Why would you give me this?" "Call it curiosity. My driver will take you wherever you want to go. Buy whatever you need. Tomorrow night, meet me back here and tell me what you did with it. I can buy anything. Anything at all. Anything." Lily looked down at Tommy, then back at Maxwell, her expression unreadable. "Okay." As his driver helped her into the car, Maxwell wondered if he'd ever see his card again. Part of him hoped she'd buy toys, candy, clothes, things any normal child would want. But something in those old soul eyes told him Lily wasn't a normal child at all. Little did he know that his impromptu experiment would change not just Lily's life, but his own, in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. The next morning, Maxwell found himself uncharacteristically distracted during his executive board meeting. His mind kept drifting to Lily and her baby brother. Had she even used the card? Part of him had expected his bank to flag unusual purchases immediately, but no alerts had come through. "Mr. Reed, your thoughts on the acquisition?" his CFO prompted. Maxwell blinked back to the present. "Proceed with the offer, but cap it at $2 billion. If they counter, we walk." He stood abruptly. "Meeting adjourned." His assistant, Vanessa, hurried after him. "Sir, you have lunch with Senator Williams at 1. Cancel it." "But the tech regulation bill—" "I said cancel it, Vanessa." Maxwell drove himself to the Lower East Side, where his driver had reported taking Lily the previous night. He'd had her followed, of course. He wasn't completely reckless. According to his security team, she'd gone to a dilapidated apartment building on Essex Street. The neighborhood was a stark contrast to Maxwell's usual haunts. Graffiti-covered walls, trash piled near overflowing bins, people huddled in doorways, seeking shelter from the persistent cold. He parked his car, immediately drawing suspicious looks, and approached the building. Inside, the hallway smelled of mildew and boiled cabbage. A man slumped against the wall, eyes glazed and unfocused. Maxwell stepped over him and checked apartment numbers until he found 3B, where his security team had tracked Lily. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Finally the door opened a crack, and an elderly woman peered out. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice raspy. "I'm looking for Lily," Maxwell said. The woman's eyes narrowed. "No Lily here. Go away." As she began closing the door, Maxwell heard a baby's cry from inside. He pushed against the door. "I know she's here." "I gave her my credit card yesterday." The elderly woman's expression changed from hostility to calculation. "You're the rich man. Wait here." Minutes later, Lily appeared at the door, Tommy balanced on her hip. She didn't seem surprised to see him. "You said tomorrow night," she stated simply. "I wanted to see what you did with the card," Maxwell replied. She studied him, then stepped back. "Come in." The apartment was small and shabby, but unexpectedly clean. In the main room, a hospital bed had been set up, where a gaunt woman lay sleeping, an IV drip connected to her arm. A young man in scrubs was checking her vitals. "That's my mom," Lily said quietly. "She has cancer. The doctors said there's nothing more they could do. The hospital sent her home to die 3 weeks ago." Maxwell felt a weight in his stomach. "And you used the card for—" "Private nurse." Lily nodded toward the man in scrubs. "He's here 24 hours, and medicine." "Mum needed pain medicine, but it costs too much, and a special bed so she doesn't get those sores again." The elderly woman, apparently a neighbor, brought Tommy a bottle. Maxwell noticed a small pile of grocery bags in the kitchen, practical items, diapers, formula, simple foods. "No toys? No candy?" Maxwell asked. Lily looked at him as if he'd suggested something absurd. "Tommy has 1 toy. That's enough. We needed the other things more." The private nurse approached. "Mr. Reed, I'm Jason. I understand you're covering Mrs. Taylor's care." He lowered his voice. "Sir, with the right palliative treatment, she could have weeks, maybe months of quality time left with her children, but without it." He glanced at Lily. "That little girl has been changing her mother's bedding, trying to give medications, caring for an infant. She's 8 years old." Maxwell felt something crack inside him, a fissure in the carefully constructed wall of indifference he'd built around himself. "How much for 6 months of full-time care?" Jason named a figure that would barely register in Maxwell's accounts. "Consider it done," Maxwell said, then turned to Lily. "You didn't buy a single thing for yourself, did you?" She shrugged. "Mom needed the medicine more." At that moment, the woman on the bed stirred. "Lily? Who's there, baby?" Lily went to her mother, taking her thin hand. "It's Mr. Reed, Mom. He's helping us." The woman's eyes, the same startling blue as Lily's, focused on Maxwell. Despite her condition, there was strength in her gaze. "Why would you help strangers?" Maxwell had no ready answer. His experiment had backfired spectacularly. He'd expected to prove that everyone had their price, that anyone, even a child, would be corrupted by unlimited funds. Instead, he'd found the opposite. "Your daughter impressed me," he finally said. "I've never seen anyone make more responsible choices with money." "She's always been an old soul," her mother whispered, "taking care of everyone since her father left. Too much responsibility for such small shoulders." As if summoned by mention of his absence, the front door suddenly burst open. A man stumbled in, unshaven and wild-eyed, smelling of alcohol and desperation. "Sarah, where's the money?" he demanded, barely registering the others in the room. Lily stepped in front of her mother protectively. "Dad, you can't be here. The judge said—" "Shut up," he snarled, advancing toward them. "I know you got money. The neighbor told me about the fancy doctor, the deliveries." Maxwell moved between them. "I think you should leave." The man looked Maxwell up and down, taking in the expensive suit, the confident stance. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who cares about your family more than you apparently do," Maxwell replied coldly. "Now get out before I call the police." What happened next would change the course of all their lives. Daniel Taylor lunged forward, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Maxwell with undisguised hatred. "This is my family, my apartment. You don't tell me what to do." Before Maxwell could react, Daniel grabbed a lamp from the side table and swung it wildly. Maxwell ducked, but the ceramic base grazed his temple, sending a shock of pain through his skull. Blood trickled down his face as he stumbled backward. "Dad, stop!" Lily screamed, clutching Tommy tighter as the baby began to wail. The nurse, Jason, jumped between them, trying to restrain Daniel. "Sir, you need to calm down." "Get off me." Daniel shoved Jason hard, sending him crashing into the medical equipment. The IV pole toppled, pulling the needle from Sarah's arm. She cried out weakly from the bed. Maxwell had never been in a physical fight in his life. His battles were fought in boardrooms with lawyers and contracts. But something fierce and protective surged through him as he watched this man terrorize his family. He tackled Daniel, both men crashing to the floor. "You're hurting them!" Maxwell shouted, struggling to pin the stronger man down. "Your wife is dying, and your children are starving, and all you care about is yourself." Daniel's fist connected with Maxwell's jaw, sending stars across his vision. But Maxwell held on, fueled by a rage he didn't know he possessed. This man had abandoned his responsibilities, left an 8-year-old girl to care for a dying mother and infant brother. It was unconscionable. The elderly neighbor had run into the hallway, screaming for help. Within minutes, sirens wailed outside, and police officers burst through the door, separating the men and restraining Daniel. "He violated the restraining order," the neighbor told the officers. "He's not supposed to be anywhere near Sarah or the children." As Daniel was handcuffed and led away, shouting threats and obscenities, Maxwell sat on the floor, touching his bleeding temple in shock. In his 30 years, he'd never thrown a punch, never been in a situation he couldn't control with money or influence. The rawness of the experience left him shaken. Lily approached cautiously, still holding Tommy. "You're hurt," she said, her voice small but steady. Maxwell attempted a smile. "I'll be fine. Are you okay? And your mom?" Jason was already reconnecting Sarah's IV. "She's stable but upset. This kind of stress isn't good for her condition." Lily's composure, which had held through so much, finally cracked. Tears filled her eyes. "He always comes back when we have anything good. Always takes it away." Maxwell felt something shift inside him, a decision forming before he even consciously recognized it. "Not this time," he promised. "Not ever again." After giving his statement to the police, Maxwell made a series of calls. By evening, He had arranged for Sarah's transfer to Memorial Sloan Kettering's top cancer ward, secured a restraining order extension against Daniel, and rented a fully furnished apartment in a secure building near the hospital. "You can't just uproot them," his attorney cautioned over the phone. "Watch me," Maxwell replied. "The mother needs specialized care, and the children need safety. Make it happen." As paramedics prepared to transport Sarah, Maxwell knelt before Lily, who was gathering their meager belongings. "I'm sorry about your father," he said gently. Lily shook her head. "He wasn't always like this. Before Mum got sick, before he lost his job, he used to read me stories." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I still love him, but I'm afraid of him too." Maxwell felt a lump in his throat. "That's a lot for anyone to understand, especially someone your age." She looked up at him with those old soul eyes. "Why are you doing all this? Your test is over. I gave you back your card." She pulled the black credit card from her pocket and held it out. Maxwell looked at the small plastic rectangle that represented so much of what he had valued: wealth, status, power. It seemed insignificant now compared to the courage of this child. "Keep it," he said, "for emergencies." She frowned. "Mom says we shouldn't take charity." "It's not charity, Lily. It's an investment." "In what?" Maxwell considered this. "In humanity, I suppose. In reminding me what actually matters." As they left the apartment, Maxwell carried Tommy while Lily held her mother's hand in the ambulance. He caught his reflection in a window, disheveled, bloody, bruised, and barely recognized himself. The immaculate billionaire was gone, replaced by someone who had finally engaged with the messy reality of life. His phone buzzed incessantly. Missed meetings, concerned executives, the senator he'd stood up. The carefully structured world he'd built was demanding his return. But for the first time in years, Maxwell Reed wasn't concerned with what he was supposed to do. He only cared about what was right. And that night, as he sat beside Lily in Sarah's new hospital room, watching the child finally surrender to exhaustion, he made a silent vow: this family would never be alone again. Whatever it took, however long it required, he would be there. Not because of guilt or charity or even kindness, but because in their struggle he had found something he hadn't realized was missing: purpose. The experiment had failed. Or perhaps, in a way he never anticipated, it had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations. 3 weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, legal meetings, and profound life changes for everyone involved. Sarah Taylor was responding better than expected to her new treatment protocol at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Though the doctors remained realistic about her prognosis, they spoke now of extending her life by months, possibly even a year or more, rather than the weeks they had initially predicted. Maxwell had settled Lily and Tommy into a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in a dormant building just blocks from the hospital. The place was professionally decorated, but still felt somewhat sterile, lacking the personal touches that transform a space from a residence to a home. "You could put up pictures," Maxwell suggested one evening as he joined Lily at the dining table. He had taken to having dinner with the children 3 or 4 nights a week while Sarah underwent treatments. "Make it feel more like your own place." Lily looked around at the cream-colored walls. "We don't have many pictures. Dad took the photo albums when he left." Maxwell nodded, making a mental note to address this. "How was school today?" This was another change. Maxwell had arranged for Lily to attend West Side Academy, one of Manhattan's most prestigious private schools. After assessing her, they had been impressed by her intelligence and placed her with students her own age, despite her spotty educational background. "It's different," Lily said carefully, helping Tommy with his mashed potatoes. "The kids have so much stuff. Bella has 6 American Girl dolls. 6! And they all have phones, even though we're only 8. Maxwell smiled. "Do you want a phone?" She shook her head. "No, but..." She hesitated. What is it? They ask questions. About why I live near the school but not with my parents, about why a driver takes me home, about why my clothes are new, but I don't know the games they play at recess. She looked down. I don't know what to tell them. Maxwell hadn't considered the social implications of Lily's sudden change in circumstances. You can tell them the truth, or whatever parts of it you're comfortable sharing. The truth is weird, Lily said, that a billionaire gave my mom cancer treatments and us an apartment because I didn't buy toys with his credit card. They'll think I made it up. Maxwell laughed, despite himself. When you put it that way, it does sound implausible. Tommy banged his spoon on the high chair, demanding attention. At 13 months, he was becoming more mobile and vocal every day. Maxwell reached over and tousled his soft hair, earning a gummy smile in return. How about this? You can tell them I'm a family friend who's helping out while your mom is sick. That's true enough. Lily considered this, then nodded. Okay, but the other moms are going to keep asking Ms. Rodriguez if you're married. Maxwell nearly choked on his water. What? They all try to talk to you at pickup, Lily said matter-of-factly. Ms. Rodriguez says they're like sharks when fresh meat hits the water. That's disturbing, Maxwell said, making a mental note to send his driver for school pickups more often. His phone rang. Vanessa, his assistant. He had been working remotely more frequently, delegating responsibilities in a way that would have been unthinkable a month ago. Mr. Reed, the Tokyo investors are waiting on the conference call. They've been holding for 10 minutes. Maxwell glanced at his watch and cursed under his breath. I'll be on in 5, he said, ending the call. You said a bad word, Lily observed. That's $1 in the swear jar. We have a swear jar? We do now. She pointed to an empty mason jar on the counter. Mom's idea. She says you work too much and need consequences. Maxwell laughed, pulling out his wallet and depositing $1. Your mom is a wise woman. Speaking of Sarah, he had visited her earlier that day while Lily was at school. Her doctor had shared promising news about her response to treatment, but also concerns about her emotional state. She's fighting physically, Dr. Chen had explained, but I worry she's losing hope mentally. Patients do better when they have something to live for beyond just surviving. Maxwell had thought about this all day. Sarah needed more than medical treatment. She needed purpose, just as he had found purpose in helping her family. Lily, he said now, what would make your mom happiest? Besides getting well, I mean. Lily thought for a moment as she wiped Tommy's face. Before she got sick, she was taking college classes. She wanted to be a teacher. Online classes? No, real ones. At City College. She had to stop when the medical bills got too big. She still has all her books, though. She reads them in the hospital sometimes. This gave Maxwell an idea. Would you be okay if I talked to your mom about something? A way she might be able to keep studying even during treatment? Lily's eyes brightened. She'd like that. She always says education is the one thing no one can take away from you. Maxwell's phone buzzed again. The Tokyo investors were growing impatient. For a moment, he felt the pull of his old life, the responsibilities and expectations that had defined him for so long. Then he looked at Lily, methodically cleaning up after dinner, and Tommy, happily babbling in his high chair, and made his choice. Vanessa, he said when he called back, reschedule Tokyo. Something more important has come up. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Maxwell sat in Sarah's hospital room outlining his proposal. A full scholarship whenever you're ready to return, and a position in the education foundation we're launching next year, if you want it. Sarah studied him, her blue eyes, so like Lily's, searching his face. She was still gaunt, but some color had returned to her cheeks, and her voice was stronger. Why are you doing this, Maxwell? All of it. The truth. He considered deflecting, offering some platitude about corporate responsibility or giving back. But Sarah Taylor deserved honesty. "I've spent my life accumulating wealth and power," he said slowly. "I thought that was the point, to win the game. But then I met your daughter, and she showed me in one day what I hadn't learned in 30 years, that none of it matters if you're not using it to help others." Sarah's expression softened. "Lily has that effect on people. She's been my strength through all of this. I just worry." Her voice caught. "I worry about what happens to them if the treatment doesn't work, if I'm not here." Maxwell took her hand, surprised by his own gesture. "They'll never be alone, Sarah. I promise you that." As he said the words, he realized he was making a commitment far beyond financial support. He was binding his life to this family's in ways he couldn't yet fully comprehend. And strangely, instead of feeling trapped by this prospect, he felt liberated. Outside the hospital window, Manhattan sparkled with its million lights, a city of ambition and indifference that Maxwell had conquered but never truly inhabited. Now, in this quiet room, he felt more connected to humanity than he had in all his years of wealth and success. "Tokyo can wait," he murmured almost to himself. "Some things are more important." Summer arrived with unexpected warmth and promise. Sarah had been released from the hospital in late May, able to move into the apartment with her children, though she still attended regular treatments and remained frail. Her prognosis, while not exactly hopeful, had stabilized into what her doctors called managed uncertainty. She might have 6 months or 2 years. No one could say for certain. What was certain was the transformation that had occurred in all their lives. Maxwell stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the sunrise over Central Park. In the 4 months since he'd met Lily and her family, his perspective had shifted so dramatically, he sometimes felt like a different person. Reed Technologies was still thriving, but he had restructured his role, delegating day-to-day operations to his executive team while he focused on the newly created Reed Foundation, dedicated to supporting single parents and children in crisis. His phone chimed with a message from Lily. "Mom feels good today, still coming for the picnic." He smiled. Today was July 4th, and he had promised to take them to the park before the evening fireworks. Such ordinary activities had become the highlight of his schedule, a stark contrast to the exclusive galas and networking events that once filled his calendar. 3 hours later, Maxwell spread a blanket under a shady tree in Central Park, watching as Tommy toddled after pigeons with infectious delight. At 17 months, he was walking confidently and beginning to form words, his favorite being an enthusiastic "Max" whenever Maxwell appeared. "He'll fall," Sarah cautioned as Tommy ventured farther. "I've got him," Maxwell assured her, keeping a close eye on the boy. He had learned to anticipate Tommy's tumbles, usually reaching him just as his chubby legs gave way. Lily was setting out the picnic lunch, sandwiches she had insisted on making herself, despite Maxwell's offer to have it catered. "It's not a real picnic if you don't make it yourself," she had declared, with the certainty only a 9-year-old could muster. Her birthday had passed in April, celebrated with a small party at the apartment. Sarah leaned back against the tree trunk, closing her eyes against the dappled sunlight. Though still thin, she looked more at peace than Maxwell had ever seen her. "The scholarship paperwork came through," she said. "I can start classes in September, part-time." "That's wonderful," Maxwell replied, genuinely pleased. The educational trust he had established for Sarah was one of many changes he had implemented, both personally and professionally. "Have you decided on your courses?" "Elementary education to start, if my health holds." She let the sentence hang, the unspoken "if" heavy between them. Maxwell caught Tommy just as he was about to faceplant into the grass, swinging him up into the air. The baby's delighted giggles drew smiles from both adults. "I met with Daniel yesterday," Sarah said quietly, once Tommy had been distracted with a toy. Maxwell tensed. Daniel Taylor had been in and out of rehab since his arrest, his relationship with his family complicated by his struggle with addiction and the restraining order that remained in effect. How did that go? Better than before. He's 90 days sober, working construction again. She twisted the edge of the blanket between her fingers. He wants to see the kids. Maxwell kept his expression neutral, though his instinct was protective opposition. The psychological evaluation that had been part of Daniel's probation had revealed a man damaged by his own childhood trauma, perpetuating cycles of abandonment and abuse. But it had also shown someone capable of change, if properly motivated and supported. "What do you think?" he asked Sarah, respecting that this was ultimately her decision. "I think," she began slowly, "I think children need their father, if he's capable of being one. Supervised visits to start, maybe more if he stays sober." Lily approached with the picnic basket, having overheard. "Is Dad coming back?" Her voice was carefully controlled, but Maxwell could see the conflict in her eyes, hope warring with fear. Sarah reached for her daughter's hand. "Not back to live with us, sweetheart, but maybe to visit if he keeps getting better." Lily nodded, absorbing this. "Can Maxwell still come over too?" "Of course," Sarah and Maxwell answered simultaneously, then exchanged a look that contained more understanding than either was ready to acknowledge. The nature of Maxwell's relationship with the Taylor family had become a subject of speculation among his friends and colleagues. His executive team was baffled by his sudden interest in work-life balance. His former girlfriend, a model he had dated casually for 2 years, had ended things with a pointed comment about his instant family. Even Thomas, the maître d' at Aureum, had given him knowing looks when he brought Sarah to dinner the previous weekend. The truth was more complex than anyone realized. Maxwell had never intended to become so deeply involved in their lives. What had begun as a social experiment, then evolved into philanthropic support, had become something far more personal. He wasn't Lily and Tommy's father, would never try to replace Daniel despite his flaws, but he had become something just as important. A constant, reliable presence in lives that had known too much instability. And Sarah. His feelings for her were evolving in ways that both excited and terrified him. She challenged him intellectually, never impressed by his wealth or status. Her resilience in the face of adversity humbled him. Her grace in accepting help without surrendering dignity taught him about true strength. "Penny for your thoughts," she said now, interrupting his reverie. Maxwell smiled. "Just thinking about how much has changed since February." "Regrets?" she asked, a hint of vulnerability in her question. "Not a single one," he answered truthfully. Tommy returned to the blanket, plopping down beside Maxwell and offering him a slightly crushed cookie. Maxwell accepted it with exaggerated gratitude, pretending to eat it, while Tommy watched seriously. "He loves you," Sarah observed softly. The simple statement hit Maxwell with unexpected force. Love had rarely been discussed in his family growing up. Achievement, success, legacy. These were the values instilled by his father, a self-made man who viewed emotional attachment as weakness. Maxwell had internalized these lessons well, building walls between himself and genuine connection. Now those walls were crumbling, brick by brick, dismantled by a baby's unquestioning trust, a child's resilient spirit, and a woman's quiet courage. "The feeling is mutual," he managed to reply, his voice rougher than he intended. Lily flopped down beside them, her face flushed from running. "Can we get ice cream after lunch? There's a cart by the lake." "Absolutely," Maxwell agreed, grateful for the shift to lighter territory. "My treat." "You always say that," Lily pointed out. "You never let Mum pay for anything." Sarah gave him a mock-stern look. "She's right, you know. You can't solve everything with money, Maxwell." "I'm learning that," he admitted, slowly. As they shared their simple picnic in the summer sunshine, surrounded by other families enjoying the holiday, Maxwell realized he had never felt more content. His life before seemed hollow in comparison, endless acquisition without true satisfaction, connections without depth. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had given Lily his black card as a test of character, never expecting that he would be the one ultimately changed by the encounter. She had shown him a different way to measure wealth, not in dollars or assets, but in moments like these. Tommy's sticky hand in his, Lily's uninhibited laughter, Sarah's quiet smile as she watched them all. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah's health, Daniel's recovery, the inevitable complications of their unconventional relationship, Maxwell knew with certainty that he was exactly where he needed to be. The fireworks that night would illuminate the sky with temporary brilliance, but the light that had entered his life promised something far more lasting. October painted Central Park in brilliant reds and golds as Maxwell pushed Sarah's wheelchair along the winding paths. Despite the beautiful fall day, a heaviness hung between them. The latest scan results had not been good. The cancer was advancing again, outpacing the treatments that had bought them precious months of stability. "I don't want to do the new trial," Sarah said, breaking the silence that had stretched since leaving the doctor's office. "I've read the research. The side effects are brutal, and the success rate is minimal." Maxwell stopped the wheelchair beside a bench overlooking the lake. "But there's still a chance. A 5% chance of extending my life by weeks, not months," she interrupted gently, "at the cost of spending those weeks violently ill, too sick to be with my children." She turned to face him, her eyes clear and determined. "Quality over quantity, Maxwell. That's my choice." He sat beside her wheelchair, fighting the urge to argue, to insist she try everything, anything. In the business world, Maxwell never accepted defeat, never stopped fighting for what he wanted, but this wasn't business. This was Sarah's life, her body, her decision. "What can I do?" he asked finally. She reached for his hand. "Help me make memories with my children while I still can. And when the time comes," her voice faltered slightly, "be there for them afterward." The request hung in the air between them, monumental in its simplicity, devastating in its implications. Maxwell felt tears threatening and didn't try to hide them. With Sarah, he had learned it was okay to be vulnerable, to show the emotions he'd spent a lifetime suppressing. "Always," he promised, "but Sarah, I need you to know something." He took both her hands in his. "These past 8 months, you and the kids, you've given me more than I could ever give you. You made me human again." She smiled, the autumn sunlight catching the gold flecks in her blue eyes. "You were always human, Maxwell. You just forgot for a while." A text chimed on his phone, Lily checking in from school. Since starting 4th grade at Westside Academy, she had thrived academically, though she still struggled sometimes to bridge the gap between her life experiences and those of her privileged classmates. "Lily wants to know if we're still taking Tommy to the zoo this weekend," Maxwell reported. "Tell her yes," Sarah said firmly. "Every plan goes forward, no cancellations because of today's news." Maxwell typed the response, adding a reassuring message that they'd pick her up from her playdate later. He had learned to communicate with Lily in a way that respected her maturity while preserving what childhood she had left. It was a delicate balance. "There's something else we need to discuss," Sarah said. "Daniel." Maxwell tensed. Daniel Taylor had maintained his sobriety for 6 months now, had completed anger management and parenting classes, and had been steadily rebuilding his relationship with his children through supervised visits. Maxwell had kept his distance during these reunions, respecting the family's privacy while ensuring security remained in place. "What about him?" Maxwell asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. "He's their father," Sarah said simply. "After I'm gone, they'll need him more than ever." Maxwell felt a flare of possessiveness that he immediately tried to suppress. "Sarah, I know he's sober now, but given his history—" "People change," she interrupted. "You did. Look at you now compared to the man who gave his black card to a starving child as a social experiment." Her tone was teasing, taking the sting from her words. Maxwell had to acknowledge the truth in this. Fair point, but Daniel's issues run deep. The abandonment, the violence, the addiction, Sarah finished. "Yes, and he'll always be recovering, never recovered. But he loves them, Maxwell. In his broken way, he loves them, and they love him." She looked out over the lake, where fallen leaves floated on the surface like small boats. "I'm not saying he should have full custody. I would never risk that. What I'm saying is that they'll need both of you. Different kinds of support, different kinds of love." Maxwell struggled with this. The idea of co-parenting with Daniel Taylor, a man he still didn't fully trust, was challenging. Yet he understood Sarah's concern. Children needed roots, connection to their origins, even when those origins were imperfect. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked carefully. "A guardianship arrangement? You as primary guardian, with Daniel having structured visitation that increases if he maintains his recovery." She squeezed his hand. "I've already spoken to my lawyer about the paperwork." Maxwell felt overwhelmed by the responsibility, the trust she was placing in him. "Sarah, are you sure? There must be family members. My parents are gone. My sister lives overseas and has her own health issues. There's no one else I trust with my children's lives and futures." Her gaze was steady, despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "Unless you don't want—" "No," he said quickly. "I want to. I want to be worthy of that trust." "You already are." She smiled sadly. "The irony isn't lost on me, you know. The day Lily met you, I thought I had months to live. Now it's 8 months later, and I still have months to live. Just better ones than I would have had. You gave us that time, Maxwell. Good time." A young couple walked past, arguing playfully about dinner plans. Sarah watched them with a wistful expression. "I've been thinking about what I want the kids to know about me after, the stories I want preserved." Maxwell nodded, understanding her need to create this legacy. "We could record you telling them, videos they can watch as they grow up." "I'd like that," she agreed. "And photos. We don't have enough family photos." We'll take more," Maxwell promised. "Starting today." He helped her from the wheelchair onto the bench beside him, supporting her slight weight easily. Taking out his phone, he held it up to capture them both with the autumn foliage as backdrop. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, her smile tired but genuine. "Send that to Lily," she requested after he took the picture. "She worries when she doesn't hear from us." As Maxwell sent the photo, he noticed Daniel's name appear in his message notifications. The timing was uncanny given their conversation. He opened it reluctantly. "Need to talk about the kids," Daniel had written. "Important." "Today, if possible." Maxwell showed Sarah the message, concern creasing his brow. "What do you think?" She considered it. "He wouldn't reach out to you directly unless it was significant. You should meet him. I don't want to leave you alone right now." "I'm not made of glass, Maxwell." She gave him a gentle push. "Go. I'll have the nurse come early. Meet Daniel, then pick up Lily. We'll have dinner together and tell the kids about the zoo this weekend." Maxwell hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be quick." He helped her back into the wheelchair to return to the apartment, his mind racing with possibilities of what Daniel might want to discuss. Later, sitting across from Daniel Taylor in a quiet coffee shop, Maxwell was struck by how much healthier the man looked compared to their first violent encounter. Sobriety had brought clarity to his eyes and steadiness to his hands. He was still rough around the edges, but the dangerous volatility seemed contained. "I heard about Sarah's new results," Daniel said without preamble. My sponsor works at the hospital. Maxwell tensed. That seems like a breach of privacy. Daniel shook his head. He didn't give details, just said it wasn't good news. He stared into his coffee. I know we're not friends, Reed, probably never will be. But we both care about those kids. We do, Maxwell agreed cautiously. Sarah told me about the guardianship plan, Daniel continued. You raising them, me having visitation. Maxwell waited, expecting argument or resentment. I think she's right, Daniel said, surprising him. I'm not ready to be their only parent. Maybe never will be. The things I've done. He trailed off, then refocused. But I am their father. I want to be in their lives, in a healthy way. That's mature of you, Maxwell acknowledged. Daniel gave a humorless laugh. 6 months sober gives you clarity, if nothing else. He leaned forward. Here's the thing. I got offered a construction job in Chicago. Better pay, benefits, fresh start. Part of me wants to take it, get away from all the places I used to drink, all the people who knew me at my worst. Maxwell felt a spike of alarm. You'd leave your children when their mother is dying? No, Daniel said sharply. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I'm turning it down, staying here, for them. He met Maxwell's gaze directly. But I need to know we can make this work. You and me, figuring out how to both be in their lives without it being a war zone. The sincerity in the other man's voice was unmistakable. Maxwell realized that Daniel was offering a truce, not just for the children's sake, but perhaps for his own recovery as well. I think we can make it work, Maxwell said finally, for Lily and Tommy's sake. Daniel nodded, relief evident in his expression. Sarah's a good judge of character. If she trusts you with our kids, that means something. He stood, extending his hand. I won't let them down again, and I won't make your job harder than it needs to be. Maxwell shook his hand, sealing an unlikely alliance that would shape all their futures. As Daniel left, Maxwell remained seated, processing the unexpected turn of events. His phone chimed with a message from Lily. Done with playdate. Ready when you are. Attached was a photo she had taken of herself, making a funny face. Despite everything, Maxwell smiled. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah's declining health, the complex guardianship arrangement, his evolving role in these children's lives, he would face them head-on. The black card experiment that had begun in February had evolved into something profound and life-altering. Maxwell Reed, the billionaire who once viewed people as predictable and disappointing, had discovered the messy, complicated beauty of human connection. And despite the heartbreak on the horizon, he wouldn't trade it for all the wealth in the world. The November rain beat against the windows of Sarah's hospital room, the steady rhythm providing a somber soundtrack to the vigil within. Maxwell sat beside her bed, holding her frail hand as she slept fitfully. The last 3 weeks had seen a rapid decline in her condition, the cancer advancing with a cruelty that left even the most experienced doctors shaking their heads in helpless sympathy. Across the room, Daniel dozed in an uncomfortable chair, his work boots still muddy from the construction site he'd left in a hurry when the call came. His face, even in sleep, carried the strain of the past month. The struggle to maintain sobriety amid mounting grief, the effort to be present for his children while confronting his many failures as a husband and father. The door opened quietly, and Lily entered with her school backpack still on her shoulders. At 9 years old, she carried herself with the composure of someone much older, but Maxwell could see the fear in her eyes as she approached her mother's bed. "How was school?" Maxwell asked softly, making space for her beside him. "Fine," she answered automatically, her gaze fixed on Sarah's sleeping form. "Ms. Rodriguez says I can take as much time off as I need." Maxwell nodded. Lily's teachers had been remarkably supportive, sending work home and offering flexibility as the family navigated Sarah's final days. The school counselor had arranged special sessions to help Lily process what was happening, though Maxwell suspected no amount of professional guidance could truly prepare a child for losing her mother. "Where's Tommy?" Lily asked, glancing around the room. "With the nurse in the family lounge," Maxwell explained. "He was getting restless." At 20 months, Tommy had no real understanding of what was happening, only that the familiar routines of his young life had been disrupted. He had grown increasingly clingy with Maxwell in recent weeks, as if sensing that more change was coming. Sarah stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Lily," she whispered, a smile transforming her gaunt face. "You're here." "Hi, Mom," Lily said, leaning over to kiss her cheek. "I got an A on my science project, the one about habitats." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Sarah's voice was weak but clear. "Tell me about it." As Lily described her project, Maxwell watched the profound connection between mother and daughter, the love that transcended the clinical sterility of the hospital room, the tubes and monitors that had become an extension of Sarah's failing body. He felt a familiar ache in his chest, a mixture of admiration and sorrow that had become his constant companion. Daniel awoke, stretching his large frame before joining them at the bedside. The tension that had once crackled between him and Maxwell had evolved into a wary collaboration, united by their shared concern for the children's well-being. "The contractor called," Daniel said to Maxwell in a low voice. "The renovations to your place should be done by next week." Maxwell nodded in acknowledgement. The decision to modify his penthouse to accommodate Lily and Tommy had been made jointly with Sarah and Daniel, a practical solution that would provide stability for the children while allowing Daniel regular visitation as he continued rebuilding his life in a halfway house for recovering addicts. "Good," Maxwell replied. "I want everything to be ready." He left unspoken the rest of the sentence. "When the time comes." A nurse entered with Tommy in her arms, the toddler's face lighting up at the sight of his family gathered together. "Max!" he called, reaching out with chubby arms. Maxwell took him, breathing in the clean baby scent of his hair. "Hey, buddy. Want to see Mama?" Sarah reached out weakly as Maxwell brought Tommy close. "My beautiful boy," she murmured, touching his cheek. "Growing so fast." Tommy patted her face with curious gentleness, as if instinctively understanding her fragility. "Mama's sick," he stated with the simple clarity of a toddler. "Yes, baby," Sarah confirmed, tears filling her eyes. "Mama's very sick." The family remained together as afternoon faded into evening, the hospital staff making exceptions to visiting hours and child presence restrictions out of compassion for their situation. They shared a simple dinner brought in from outside, Sarah managing only a few spoonfuls of soup but delighting in watching her children eat. As the night nurse came to adjust Sarah's medications, she suggested it might be time for the children to go home. "Mrs. Taylor needs rest," she said kindly but firmly. Maxwell exchanged glances with Daniel, their unspoken communication growing more intuitive with practice. "I'll take them back to the apartment," Maxwell offered. "You can stay with Sarah tonight." Daniel nodded gratefully. "I'll call if anything changes." As Maxwell gathered Tommy's things and helped Lily with her coat, Sarah beckoned him closer. "Maxwell," she whispered, her voice suddenly urgent. "The videos, are they finished?" He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "All done. Everything you wanted to say to them for every birthday, graduation, wedding, it's all saved and secured. Multiple copies just like we discussed." Relief softened her features. "And the letters. In the safe deposit box. Lily gets the key on her 18th birthday." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, gathering strength. "One more thing. The trust fund stipulations." "Sarah," Maxwell interrupted gently, "everything's in place. Your wishes for their education, for how and when they access the funds, it's all legally binding. You don't need to worry." The trust fund had been Maxwell's creation, a substantial endowment that would ensure Lily and Tommy never faced the financial insecurity that had defined their early years. But the conditions had been Sarah's idea: education first, then helping others, then personal security. Money for learning, for service, for stability, values that reflected the woman she was. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Maxwell felt his throat tighten. "No, thank you, Sarah, for trusting me with them." Her blue eyes, still startlingly bright despite her weakened state, held his. "It was never just about trust, Maxwell. You know that." He nodded, unable to speak past the emotion constricting his chest. Their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. Not quite romance in the traditional sense, but a deep, abiding connection that transcended conventional definitions. In another world, another time, perhaps they might have had a chance to explore what lay between them. But in this reality, their bond had been shaped by her illness, forged in the crucible of impending loss. "I know," he finally managed. "I know." She smiled, a hint of her old spark visible through the exhaustion. "Go on, take care of my babies. I need some time with their father." Maxwell gathered the children, Tommy half asleep on his shoulder, Lily subdued but dry-eyed as she kissed her mother goodnight. In the corridor, he paused to compose himself before leading them toward the elevator. "She's not coming home again, is she?" Lily asked quietly, her perceptiveness cutting through any pretense. Maxwell knelt to meet her eyes, balancing Tommy carefully. "I don't think so, sweetheart. The doctors are doing everything they can, but Mom's too sick," Lily finished. Her expression was solemn, but there was acceptance there too, the result of months of gentle preparation, of honest conversations adapted for her age, but never condescending. "Yes," Maxwell confirmed, "she's very sick, but she's not in pain, and she knows how much you and Tommy love her. That's what matters most to her now." Lily nodded, processing this. "Will we live with you after, like we talked about?" "Yes, your room is already set up, and Tommy's too, and your dad will visit often." "And you'll stay? You won't leave us too?" The directness of her question pierced Maxwell to his core. "I will never leave you, Lily. That's a promise." She studied his face with the intensity that had struck him from their first meeting, those old soul eyes that seemed to see right through superficial reassurances. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her, because she slipped her small hand into his. "Okay," she said simply. "Let's go home. Let's go." As they drove through the rainy Manhattan night, Tommy sleeping soundly in his car seat, Lily gazed out at the gleaming city lights reflecting off wet pavement. Maxwell watched her in the rearview mirror, this extraordinary child who had changed the course of his life, with her unflinching integrity and quiet courage. Whatever came next, the grief, the adjustments, the complex reality of becoming a family forged by circumstance rather than blood, he knew with absolute certainty that the impulsive experiment he had begun 10 months ago had become the most meaningful commitment of his life. The black card had been offered as a test of character. Instead, it had become the catalyst for his own redemption, leading him to a kind of wealth he had never known existed. Christmas lights twinkled throughout the penthouse, their soft glow reflecting off the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Manhattan's glittering skyline. It was Christmas Eve, exactly 6 weeks since Sarah had passed away in the hospital room, with Daniel holding one hand and Maxwell the other. Her final words a whispered, "Take care of each other," that seemed directed at all of them. The first weeks after her death had been a blur of funeral arrangements, legal proceedings to finalize the guardianship agreement, and the delicate process of helping 2 young children understand their mother was never coming back. Tommy, too young to fully comprehend, still occasionally asked for mama before being distracted by a toy or activity. Lily had retreated into a quiet stoicism that worried Maxwell more than tears would have. Tonight, however, felt different. There was a tentative lightness in the air as Maxwell and Lily put the finishing touches on the Christmas tree, an enormous Fraser fir that filled the corner of the living room with its fresh pine scent. "Mom always put the star on last," Lily said, holding the silver treetopper Maxwell had let her select from the high-end department store. It was understated and elegant. Unlike the ostentatious decorations his interior designer usually installed for the holidays, he rarely bothered to celebrate. "Would you like to do it, to remember her?" Maxwell offered. Lily considered this, then shook her head. "I think Tommy should. Mom would like that." Maxwell lifted the toddler, who had been contentedly playing with empty ornament boxes on the floor. "Ready to put the star on top, buddy?" Tommy grasped the star in both hands, his face serious with concentration as Maxwell held him up to reach the tree's peak. With more enthusiasm than precision, he jammed the star onto the highest branch, clapping his hands in delight when it stayed in place, if slightly askew. "Perfect," Maxwell declared, setting Tommy down. "It's crooked," Lily pointed out, but she was smiling. A real smile that reached her eyes for the first time in weeks. "Perfectly crooked," Maxwell amended, relieved to see that smile. "The best trees always are." The elevator chimed, announcing Daniel's arrival. The agreement they had worked out allowed him to spend Christmas Eve with the children, while Maxwell would have them for Christmas Day. It was one of many compromises they were navigating in their unconventional co-parenting arrangement. "Dad!" Lily ran to greet him, her excitement genuine. Daniel's consistent sobriety and reliability over the past months had begun rebuilding the trust that his years of addiction had eroded. Daniel swept her up in a hug, then set her down to admire the tree. "Wow, that's something else. Did you help decorate it?" "I did most of it," Lily said proudly. "Maxwell just did the high parts." Tommy toddled over, arms raised in silent demand to be picked up. "Hey, little man," Daniel said, lifting him easily. "You been good for Santa?" Maxwell observed the interaction with a mix of emotions. There was still an instinctive wariness when Daniel was around, a protective impulse that hadn't fully dissipated despite the man's demonstrated commitment to recovery. But there was also an undeniable rightness to seeing the children with their father, a connection that Maxwell, for all his resources and dedication, could never fully replicate. "Coffee," Maxwell offered, maintaining the civil rapport they had established. "Thanks," Daniel agreed, following him to the kitchen while the children returned to the tree. As Maxwell prepared the coffee, Daniel glanced around the penthouse, taking in the evidence of how thoroughly the space had been transformed to accommodate the children. Toys organized in baskets, child-proof locks on cabinets, framed photos of Sarah prominently displayed. "You've done good by them," Daniel said quietly. "Better than I did." Maxwell paused, surprised by the admission. "You're their father. That matters to them." Daniel accepted the coffee cup, his calloused construction worker's hands dwarfing the fine porcelain. "Yeah, well, being a father is about more than DNA. It's about showing up, something I'm still learning." He took a sip, then added, "Sarah chose right. Trusting you with them." The acknowledgement hung between them, not quite friendship, but a mutual respect that had been hard-won over months of forced collaboration. "Did you bring the gifts?" Maxwell asked, changing the subject. Daniel nodded. "In the bag by the door. Nothing fancy like what you can give them, but—" "It's not about fancy," Maxwell said firmly. "It's about them knowing you thought of them. That matters more than any price tag." This was a lesson Maxwell himself had learned through Lily, one that continued to reshape his perspective on wealth and its true value. The evening progressed with an awkward but genuine attempt at holiday normalcy. They ordered in from an upscale Italian restaurant, ate cookies Lily had baked with the housekeeper's help, and watched a Christmas movie on the massive living room screen. Tommy fell asleep halfway through, curled up between his father and Maxwell on the sofa. As the movie ended, Daniel carefully extracted himself without waking Tommy. "I should get going. Early start tomorrow." Maxwell nodded, understanding the delicate balance they were maintaining. "You'll be back at noon?" "On the dot," Daniel confirmed. He hesitated, then added, "I got something for you too. It's not much, but—" He pulled a small package from his pocket and handed it to Maxwell. Surprised, Maxwell unwrapped it to find a simple leather keychain with 2 words engraved on it. "Thank you. Sarah would have wanted me to say it," Daniel explained, clearly uncomfortable with the moment of vulnerability. "For everything you've done, everything you're doing." Maxwell felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. "You don't have to—" "Yeah, I do," Daniel interrupted. "Pride's a luxury I can't afford anymore. Part of recovery is acknowledging when someone else steps up where you fell down." He glanced at Tommy, sleeping peacefully on the sofa. "Just take care of them, like you promised her." "I will," Maxwell assured him, "but they need you too, Daniel." "They always will." After Daniel said his goodbyes to Lily and left, Maxwell carried Tommy to his bedroom, a space designed with input from child psychologists to help him feel secure in his new home. Star-shaped nightlights cast a gentle glow across walls, painted with a mural of the night sky, while a sound machine played the soft white noise that helped him sleep. Maxwell tucked him in, brushing the soft blonde hair, so like Sarah's, from his forehead. "Good night, buddy," he whispered. Returning to the living room, he found Lily still awake, staring at the Christmas tree with an expression too solemn for a child her age. "Ready for bed?" he asked, sitting beside her. She shook her head. "Not yet. I'm thinking about Mom." Maxwell nodded, giving her the space to continue if she wanted to. "She loved Christmas," Lily said finally. "Even when we didn't have money for presents, she made it special. She'd cut paper snowflakes and hang them everywhere, and she always made hot chocolate with those little marshmallows." "Would you like some hot chocolate now?" Maxwell offered. Lily nodded, following him to the kitchen where he set about preparing the beverage. He'd learned to make it the way Sarah had, from scratch, not from a packet, with real chocolate and a pinch of cinnamon. As they sat at the counter with their steaming mugs, Lily looked up at him with those searching eyes. "Do you think Mom can see us? From heaven?" The question caught Maxwell off guard. His own upbringing had been devoid of religious instruction, his adult life equally secular, but he recognized the comfort Lily was seeking. "Your mom believed she would always be watching over you," he said carefully, "and I think the people we love never really leave us. They stay in our hearts and our memories." Lily considered this. "Ms. Ortiz at school says grief is love with nowhere to go." Maxwell was struck by the profound simplicity of the statement. "That's a beautiful way to think about it." "But it's not true," Lily continued, surprising him. "Because I still have places to put my love. I have Tommy and Dad and you." She looked at him directly. "You're not going to leave, right? Even if it gets hard." "Never," Maxwell promised, the single word carrying the weight of his complete commitment. "You and Tommy are my family now, Lily. Nothing will change that." She nodded, apparently satisfied. "Good, because Mom told me to take care of you too." "She did?" Maxwell asked, startled. "When I visited her alone. Before she got really sick, she said you needed us as much as we needed you, that you were learning to be human again." Maxwell felt his eyes sting with unexpected tears. It sounded exactly like something Sarah would say. Perceptive, slightly teasing, but fundamentally true. He had been half alive before meeting them, successful beyond measure, but emotionally bankrupt. "Your mom was very wise," he managed to say. Lily sipped her hot chocolate, leaving a small marshmallow mustache that made her look, for a moment, like the 9-year-old child she was supposed to be. "I'm going to put out cookies for Santa," she declared, sliding off the stool. Maxwell watched her arrange cookies on a plate with meticulous care, aware that she was old enough to doubt Santa's existence, but choosing to preserve the ritual nonetheless. Perhaps for Tommy's sake, perhaps for her own need to maintain some childhood magic amid so much loss. Later, after she had finally gone to bed, Maxwell sat alone by the Christmas tree, reflecting on the extraordinary year that was ending. 12 months ago, he had been at the peak of his professional success and the nadir of his personal fulfillment. Surrounded by wealth, but isolated within it, powerful but purposeless. Now his life was messier, more complicated, infinitely more demanding, and immeasurably richer. He had become responsible for 2 young lives, partnered in an uneasy alliance with their recovering father, and transformed from a ruthless corporate titan into someone who knew how to make hot chocolate with the perfect amount of marshmallows. From his pocket he withdrew the black credit card that had started it all. Though he had given Lily a duplicate for emergencies, this was the original, the one she had returned to him that first night, having used its unlimited potential not for self-indulgence, but for her mother's care. He turned it over in his hands, remembering his cynical certainty that even a child would be corrupted by unlimited access to wealth. How wrong he had been. How much he had learned from that mistake. Tomorrow would bring Christmas morning excitement, followed by the complex handoff to Daniel, then a quiet evening when the children returned. The day after would bring new challenges: Tommy's developmental checkup, Lily's ongoing grief counseling, Maxwell's gradual return to more active involvement at Reed Technologies. But for now, in the peaceful glow of the Christmas lights, Maxwell allowed himself to feel the full weight of both his grief for Sarah and his gratitude for the family he had found. It was not the life he had planned, not remotely the future he had envisioned when he built his empire of technology and influence. It was something far more valuable, a life of purpose, of connection, of love both given and received, a life where the true measure of wealth had nothing to do with the numbers in his bank account. Outside, snow began to fall on Manhattan, coating the city in pristine white. Inside, Maxwell Reed, billionaire, guardian, surrogate father, still evolving human being, finally understood the lesson Lily had taught him with her first fateful use of his black card, that the most precious resource wasn't money at all, but the wisdom to use whatever resources you had for something that truly mattered. "I don't want to go." Tommy's small face was flushed with anger, his blue eyes, so like his mother's, swimming with tears as he stomped his foot on the polished hardwood floor. At 3.5, he had mastered the art of the temper tantrum, his previously sunny temperament increasingly punctuated by storms of emotion. Maxwell knelt to the child's level, keeping his voice calm despite the ticking clock. "Buddy, it's just preschool. You went last week and had fun, remember? You told me about the finger painting." "No! Want to stay with you?" Tommy flung himself against Maxwell's chest, little arms wrapping around his neck with surprising strength. Lily appeared from her bedroom, already dressed in her West Side Academy uniform, her backpack neatly packed. At 10, she had grown taller and more self-possessed, though the solemn watchfulness that had always characterized her remained. "He's scared because last time Dad was supposed to pick him up but was late," she explained, matter-of-factly. "Ms. Perez had to call you instead." Maxwell suppressed a flare of irritation. Daniel had been increasingly unreliable over the past month, missing scheduled visits and showing up late for others. After nearly 2 years of steady recovery and responsible co-parenting, something had shifted, though he denied any relapse when Maxwell confronted him. "Tommy, look at me," Maxwell said gently, disengaging enough to meet the boy's tearful gaze. "I promise I will pick you up today. Not Dad, not the nanny. Me. And I'm never late, am I?" Did Tommy consider this, his little brow furrowed in thought? "Never ever?" "Never ever," Maxwell confirmed. "I'll be there right after your afternoon snack." "Pinky promise?" Tommy held out his smallest finger solemnly. Pinky promise. Maxwell linked his much larger finger with Tommy's, sealing the deal. Now let's get your dinosaur backpack and your lunchbox, okay? Crisis averted, they made their way down to the waiting car, Maxwell mentally rearranging his afternoon schedule to ensure he could fulfill his promise to Tommy. As CEO of Reed Technologies, he still had significant responsibilities, but he had restructured both the company and his role within it to prioritize his family commitments. Family. The word still occasionally caught him by surprise, though it had been nearly 2 years since Sarah's death, 2.5 since Lily had first appeared outside his restaurant. Yet here they were, a unit forged through loss and choice rather than biology, but a family nonetheless. After dropping the children at their respective schools, Maxwell directed his driver to the Reed Foundation offices rather than the corporate headquarters. The foundation had become his primary focus, expanding beyond its initial mission to support single parents, to include comprehensive programs for children in crisis, addiction recovery support, and medical assistance for families facing catastrophic illness. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," his assistant greeted him as he entered the sleek office space. Daniel Taylor called again. He said it's urgent. Maxwell checked his watch with a frown. Did he say what it's about? "No, sir, just that he needs to speak with you as soon as possible." "I'll call him from my office." Maxwell tried to quell his apprehension as he settled behind his desk. His relationship with Daniel had evolved into a wary partnership over the years, but recent tensions had reminded him of the man's volatility in the early days. Daniel answered on the first ring. "Reed, we need to talk. In person." "I'm listening," Maxwell replied evenly. "What's this about, Daniel?" There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. "I've been offered a job, foreman position on a major project. It's in Chicago." Maxwell felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Chicago. "Yeah, it's a big opportunity, Maxwell. More money, benefits, chance to really move up." Daniel's voice held an edge of defensiveness. "I've been stuck in the same position here for years." "Day, and the children?" Maxwell asked, though he already knew the answer. Another pause. "That's what I want to talk about, face to face. Can you meet me for lunch?" 5 hours later, Maxwell sat across from Daniel in a nondescript diner in Midtown, neutral territory chosen deliberately for a conversation both men knew would be challenging. Daniel looked worse than Maxwell had seen him in months, shadows under his eyes, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. But there was no smell of alcohol, no physical signs of relapse, just a man clearly wrestling with a difficult decision. "I've been sober for 2 years and 4 months, Daniel began after they ordered. "Held the same job, made every child support payment, shown up for my kids as best I could. Until recently," Maxwell pointed out. "You've missed visits, been late for pickups. Tommy was upset this morning because of it." Daniel had the grace to look ashamed. "I know it's not. I'm not drinking again. I'm not. It's just been hard trying to figure this out." "Figure what out exactly?" Maxwell pressed. Daniel met his gaze directly. "Whether I'm doing right by Lily and Tommy staying here, seeing them part-time, always being the other parent, or whether they'd be better off with a clean break." The statement hung between them, its implications rippling through the carefully constructed equilibrium of their shared guardianship. "A clean break," Maxwell repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "You mean abandoning your children? Again?" "It's not abandonment if they have you," Daniel countered. "They have stability, opportunities I could never give them. Hell, Lily's at a fancy private school. Tommy's going to follow her there. They live in a penthouse with every advantage. What am I adding to the equation except complications?" Maxwell felt a surge of anger. "You're their father, Daniel. Their connection to Sarah, to their past, to half of who they are, that's irreplaceable." "Is it?" Daniel challenged. Or am I just the screw-up who reminds them of the worst times in their lives? The drunk who couldn't hold it together when their mom got sick? Meanwhile, you're the hero who swooped in and saved the day. The bitterness in his tone was palpable, revealing insecurities that clearly had been festering beneath the surface of their arrangement. "This isn't a competition," Maxwell said firmly. "Sarah wanted both of us in their lives. Different roles, different contributions, but both important." Daniel's expression softened slightly at the mention of Sarah. "She always saw the best in everyone, even me, when I gave her damn little reason to." He sighed heavily. "But be honest, Maxwell. Haven't there been times you wished I wasn't in the picture? When it would be simpler if you were their only parent?" Maxwell considered denying it, then opted for honesty. "Yes, when you've been unreliable or made promises you didn't keep. When Tommy cries because you missed his preschool performance, or Lily pretends she doesn't care that you forgot to call on her birthday." He leaned forward. "But those moments don't negate the good ones. When you taught Tommy to ride his tricycle, or when you helped Lily build that science project, or when they light up seeing you after you've been gone." Their food arrived, but neither man touched it, too focused on the conversation that would shape their children's futures. "The job starts in a month," Daniel said. "I'd have to move within 2 weeks to find a place, get settled." "And what exactly are you proposing? That you just disappear from their lives, after everything they've already lost?" Maxwell couldn't keep the edge from his voice. Daniel flinched. "No, not entirely. I'd come back for holidays, summer visits maybe, and when they're older they could come to Chicago, see where I work, where I live." "That's not enough," Maxwell stated flatly. "They need consistency, Daniel. Presence, not just postcards and occasional appearances." "You think I don't know that?" "Oh." Daniel's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby diners. He lowered it again with visible effort. "But what if I'm doing more harm than good? What if my staying here, caught between wanting to be their dad and knowing I'll never measure up to you, is worse for them in the long run?" There was raw pain in the question, a vulnerability that caught Maxwell off guard. For all their uneasy cooperation, he had never truly considered Daniel's perspective. The challenge of co-parenting with someone who could give your children everything you couldn't. "The children need you, Daniel," Maxwell said quietly. "Not your money, not your achievements, you. And if you leave now, what message does that send? That when things get difficult, it's okay to walk away? Is that what you want them to learn?" Daniel pushed his untouched food away. "No, of course not." He rubbed his face wearily. "But maybe it's what I deserve. A clean start, a chance to rebuild somewhere new. At their expense," Maxwell pointed out. "They've already lost their mother. Don't make them lose their father, too." The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Daniel's eyes, when they met Maxwell's again, were filled with conflicting emotions, longing for escape, battling with love for his children. "I need to think," he finally said. "I haven't given them an answer yet in Chicago." "Don't make this decision alone," Maxwell advised, softening his approach. "Talk to your sponsor. Talk to the children's therapist about how this would impact them. Hell, talk to me. Really talk, not just announce what you're planning to do." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, okay." He hesitated, then added, "I never thanked you properly, you know, for stepping up when I couldn't, for being what they needed when I was a mess." The unexpected acknowledgement caught Maxwell by surprise. "They're extraordinary children. It's been my privilege." "Sarah knew what she was doing," Daniel said, a hint of his old humor returning. "Giving you her black card test. She always could see right through people." Maxwell smiled at the memory. "She could. And she saw something in both of us worth believing in." As they parted outside the diner, the tension between them had shifted into something more complex, not resolved, but at least acknowledged. Daniel promised to take time before making his final decision to consult the people Maxwell had suggested. Checking his watch, Maxwell realized he needed to head to Tommy's preschool for pickup. The promise he had made that morning felt even more significant now, a small but crucial demonstration of the consistency children needed from the adults in their lives. As he approached the cheerful building with its playground visible through a fence, he saw Tommy's face pressed against the window, watching for him. The moment the boy spotted him, his expression transformed with pure joy, small hands tapping the glass excitedly. That face, that unconditional welcome, reinforced everything Maxwell had said to Daniel. Children needed presence, reliability, the security of knowing they were loved enough to be prioritized. It wasn't about penthouse apartments or private schools, or even the stability of a conventional family structure. It was about showing up, consistently and completely. "You came!" Tommy exclaimed as he ran to Maxwell, backpack bouncing. "I promised, didn't I?" Maxwell lifted him, breathing in the mingled scents of finger paint, apple juice, and the indefinable essence of childhood. Pinky promises are unbreakable. Over Tommy's shoulder he caught sight of Daniel watching from across the street, an unreadable expression on his face. Their eyes met briefly before Daniel turned and walked away, shoulders bent as if carrying an invisible weight. Maxwell held Tommy a little tighter, hoping that whatever decision Daniel ultimately made would be guided by love rather than fear, by responsibility rather than escape. For all their differences, for all the complications of their unusual family structure, they were united in one fundamental truth. Lily and Tommy deserved parents who chose them every day, no matter how difficult that choice might sometimes be. And if Daniel couldn't or wouldn't make that choice, Maxwell would continue to do so, not out of obligation or duty, but because these children had become the center of his world, the purpose that gave meaning to all his other achievements. The black card experiment had long since transformed into something far more valuable than any financial test could measure, a lesson in what truly constituted wealth in a human life. "Are you nervous?" Maxwell adjusted his tie, watching Lily's reflection in the mirror as she meticulously braided her hair for the first day of 7th grade. At 12, she was on the cusp of adolescence, her features beginning to mature while still retaining traces of childhood. "Not really," she replied with characteristic self-possession. 7th grade is just 6th grade with more homework." Maxwell smiled at her pragmatism. "And you're okay with the carpool arrangement, Mrs. Chen will drop you off, and I'll pick you up after debate club." Lily secured her braid with an elastic band, then turned to face him directly. "It's fine, but you know you don't have to pick me up personally every day, right? I'm not Tommy. I don't have separation anxiety." "Ooh, maybe I have separation anxiety," Maxwell teased, though there was some truth to it. Watching Lily grow increasingly independent both gratified and unsettled him. "Humor your overprotective guardian." She rolled her eyes, but the gesture was affectionate rather than dismissive. "Fine. But if you're late because of another board meeting, I'm taking the subway home." "Deal, but text me first." Maxwell had been working with her therapist on giving Lily appropriate independence while maintaining necessary boundaries. It was a delicate balance, especially given her premature responsibilities as a young child. Tommy burst into the room, already dressed in his kindergarten uniform, a miniature version of Lily's with khaki pants and a navy polo. At 5, he was all boundless energy and sunny disposition, his early years of trauma seemingly healed by the stability of the past 3 years. "Lily, can I show Maxwell my backpack? All my stuff is in it." He proudly displayed his dinosaur-themed bag, carefully packed the night before. "Very impressive," Maxwell commented, examining the neatly arranged supplies. "You're super prepared for kindergarten." "Ms. Johnson said I'm advanced," Tommy informed them seriously. "I already know all my letters and numbers to 100. "That's because Lily's been teaching you since you were 3, Maxwell reminded him, sharing a smile with the older child. Lily had always taken her role as big sister seriously, particularly after Sarah's death. "Is Dad coming tonight?" Tommy asked, the abrupt change of subject typical of his age. Maxwell hesitated, exchanging a glance with Lily. Daniel's eventual decision regarding the Chicago job had been a compromise. He had accepted the position, but negotiated a modified schedule that allowed him to return to New York every other weekend to see the children. It was far from ideal, but better than the complete separation he had initially contemplated. "Not tonight, buddy," Maxwell answered gently. "Remember the calendar. Dad comes this weekend, but he wants you to call him tonight to tell him all about your first day." Tommy's face fell momentarily before brightening again. "Can we FaceTime?" "I want to show him my cubby at school." "Absolutely," Maxwell promised, "right after dinner." The relationship between Daniel and his children had evolved into something complex but functioning over the past year. His move to Chicago had initially devastated Tommy, while Lily had retreated into stoic acceptance, a coping mechanism Maxwell recognized from her earlier losses. But Daniel had, somewhat to Maxwell's surprise, maintained his commitment to regular visits and daily communication. "We should go," Lily prompted, checking the time. "Mrs. Chen will be waiting." The morning routine proceeded with practiced efficiency. Breakfast, teeth brushing, final backpack check, shoes on. As they prepared to leave the penthouse, Maxwell felt the familiar bittersweet pride of watching them grow, becoming more themselves with each passing day. "Wait," he said impulsively. "First day picture." "It's tradition." The children obediently posed by the door, Tommy with his dinosaur backpack and gap-toothed smile, Lily tall and poised beside him. Maxwell snapped several photos, knowing he would send them to Daniel later. Whatever tensions remained between the adults, they had committed to presenting a united front for the children's sake. "Okay, now one silly one," Maxwell instructed. A tradition Sarah had started that he faithfully maintained. Tommy immediately crossed his eyes and stuck out his tongue, while Lily, after a performative sigh, gave herself bunny ears and a lopsided grin. The resulting photo captured something essential about them both, Tommy's natural exuberance and Lily's carefully hidden playfulness. After they departed with Mrs. Chen, Maxwell allowed himself a moment of reflection before heading to the office. The past 4 years had transformed not only his personal life, but his professional identity as well. Reed Technologies remained successful, but his focus had shifted significantly toward the foundation's work. He had assembled a team of experts in child welfare, education, and family support, developing programs that reflected the lessons he had learned through his journey with Lily and Tommy. His phone rang. Vanessa, still his assistant after all these years, though her role had evolved alongside his. "Mr. Reed, I have Daniel Taylor on line 1. He says it's important." Maxwell tensed slightly. Unscheduled calls from Daniel rarely brought good news. "Put him through." "Maxwell." Daniel's voice sounded strained. "We need to talk about the kids." "They just left for their first day of school," Maxwell replied. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly, just complicated." Daniel paused. "I've met someone. It's serious. We're getting married." The news caught Maxwell off guard. In the years since Sarah's death, Daniel had dated occasionally, but never pursued anything lasting. "That's congratulations. Have you told the children?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first." Another pause. "Her name is Rebecca. She's a teacher. She has a daughter, Emma, who's 8. Maxwell processed this information, understanding the implications. "And you're planning to stay in Chicago permanently now?" "Yes, but that's not why I'm calling." Daniel took an audible breath. "Rebecca and I want to have the kids come live with us. In Chicago, full-time." The statement hit Maxwell like a physical blow. "What?" "We found a great house in a good school district. Emma's excited about having siblings. Rebecca's school has an excellent reputation." "Daniel!" Maxwell interrupted, struggling to keep his voice level. "You can't be serious. You want to uproot them after everything they've been through? Take them away from their home, their schools, their friends? Their home is with their father," Daniel countered, a new firmness in his voice. "I've been sober for 3.5 years, Maxwell. I've rebuilt my life, created stability. I'm ready to be their primary parent now." "And what about what they want?" Maxwell demanded. "What about the life they've established here? Lily's starting 7th grade today. Tommy's just beginning kindergarten. You want to tear them away from everything familiar?" "They're my children," Daniel stated flatly. "Legally, biologically. I've respected the guardianship arrangement because it was best for them when I couldn't provide stability. But circumstances have changed." Maxwell felt a cold dread spreading through him. He had always known intellectually that his position in the children's lives existed at Daniel's discretion, that the legal guardianship Sarah had established could be challenged by their biological father if he proved himself fit. But after 4 years, after becoming a family in every way that mattered, the possibility had seemed increasingly remote. "Daniel, think about what you're saying," he urged, fighting to keep panic from his voice. "Think about the impact another major disruption would have on them, especially Tommy. He's finally settled, thriving." "I have thought about it," Daniel interrupted. "For months. This isn't impulsive, Maxwell. Rebecca and I have discussed it with family therapists, with my sponsor. We've created a transition plan. They would finish this semester in New York, then start fresh in January in Chicago." Maxwell closed his eyes, trying to center himself. "We need to discuss this in person and with the children's therapist present." "I'm flying in tomorrow," Daniel replied. "I was going to surprise them for the weekend, but under the circumstances, I think you're right. We should meet first with Dr. Lowell if she's available." After ending the call, Maxwell sat motionless at his desk, the magnitude of the threat overwhelming him. The possibility of losing Lily and Tommy was unbearable, yet he had no legal standing to prevent it if Daniel pursued custody. The guardianship had always been contingent on Daniel's continued agreement, a temporary measure that could be reversed once he established the stability and sobriety that he now apparently had. Maxwell's first instinct was to fight, to hire the best family law attorneys, to use every resource at his disposal to maintain the status quo. But he knew such a battle would inevitably harm the children, forcing them to choose between the adults they loved and potentially exposing them to painful court proceedings. There had to be another way. That afternoon, after his last meeting, Maxwell left the office early to pick up Lily from debate club as promised. Seeing her emerge from the school building, engaged in animated conversation with her friends, he was struck anew by how much she had grown, not just physically, but in confidence and self-assurance. The guarded, prematurely responsible child who had first appeared outside his restaurant with Tommy in her arms had blossomed into a thoughtful, articulate preteen with her own distinct personality and interests. "How was the first day?" he asked as she slid into the car beside him. "Pretty good," she replied, unusually forthcoming. "Ms. Rivera asked me to captain the debate team, and I got into the advanced math class I wanted." "That's fantastic," Maxwell said, genuinely proud. "And the social stuff? How's your friend group this year?" Lily shrugged. "Same as always. Zoe's still my best friend. Oh, and there's a new girl, Amara. She just moved here from California. I invited her to sit with us at lunch." Maxwell smiled at this small but significant act of kindness. "That was thoughtful of you." "I remember what it's like to be new," Lily said simply. The comment, delivered without self-pity, reminded Maxwell of everything this child had overcome: poverty, loss, responsibility beyond her years. She had not only survived but flourished, developing an empathy that belied her age. The thought of disrupting her hard-won stability filled him with dread. After picking up Tommy from his after-school program, where he had apparently made 17 new friends on his first day, they returned to the penthouse for their traditional first day of school special dinner. Maxwell had learned to cook a few signature dishes over the years, guided initially by Sarah's handwritten recipe cards and later by cooking classes he had taken specifically to provide this piece of normalcy for the children. As they sat around the table, Tommy chattering excitedly about his teacher and classmates, Lily interjecting with more measured observations about her own day, Maxwell struggled to stay present, his mind continually returning to Daniel's bombshell. "Maxwell?" Lily's voice cut through his distraction. "Are you okay? You seem weird." Her perceptiveness had only sharpened with age. "Just tired," he deflected. "Big day for all of us." She studied him with that searching gaze that never failed to make him feel transparent. "Is it about Dad? I saw you got a call from him earlier." Maxwell hesitated. He had always been honest with the children, believing that age-appropriate truth was better than comforting lies. But he wasn't prepared to discuss Daniel's plans until they had met in person, until he had a clearer sense of how to protect them from potential conflict. "Your dad is coming to visit tomorrow instead of waiting for the weekend," he said carefully. "He has some news he wants to share with you both." "Is he sick?" Tommy asked immediately, his face creasing with worry. "No, buddy, nothing like that," Maxwell assured him quickly. "He's healthy and doing well at his job. It's different news." Lily's eyes narrowed slightly. "Good different or bad different?" "That depends on perspective," Maxwell answered truthfully. "But it's not an emergency, and we're going to talk about everything together, calmly and openly. Okay?" She nodded slowly, though her expression remained wary. Tommy, easily reassured, returned to his animated description of the classroom pet hamster he hoped to bring home for a weekend later in the year. After dinner, as promised, they video-called Daniel, who maintained a convincing normalcy as the children shared details of their first day. Maxwell observed the interaction, noting the genuine affection between father and children, the effort Daniel made to engage with their experiences and emotions. It complicated matters immeasurably. If Daniel had been neglectful or disinterested, fighting for custody would have been straightforward. But he wasn't. He was a father who had overcome significant personal demons to rebuild a relationship with his children who clearly loved them and wanted to provide for them. Later, after the children were in bed, Maxwell poured himself a rare glass of scotch and stepped out onto the penthouse terrace. The Manhattan skyline glittered against the night sky, a view he had once valued primarily as a status symbol, but now associated with the place Lily and Tommy called home. He remembered Sarah's voice, a memory from one of their last conversations. "They'll need both of you. Different kinds of support, different kinds of love." She couldn't have anticipated this scenario. Daniel wanting to reclaim his role as primary parent, potentially removing the children from Maxwell's daily life. What would she have wanted? What was truly best for Lily and Tommy? The questions haunted him as he gazed out at the city that had witnessed their unlikely family's formation. Whatever happened next, Maxwell knew one thing with absolute certainty. His commitment to these children transcended legal documents and living arrangements. He would fight for them if necessary, compromise if possible, but never, under any circumstances, abandon the promise he had made to Sarah and to them. The black card experiment had evolved into a lifetime commitment, one that would face its greatest test in the days ahead. The conversation that would determine Lily and Tommy's future took place in Dr. Lowell's warmly lit office the following afternoon. The children's therapist had been working with them since Sarah's illness, providing continuity through multiple life transitions. Her presence lent a structured neutrality to what might otherwise have become a heated confrontation. Daniel sat tensely on one end of the comfortable sofa, Maxwell on the other, with Dr. Lowell in an armchair positioned between them. The physical arrangement mirrored the psychological reality. Two men who had maintained an uneasy alliance for years, now potentially at odds over the most important aspect of their shared lives. Before we discuss the specifics of Daniel's proposal, Dr. Lowell began, her calm voice a counterpoint to the tension in the room. I think it's important to acknowledge that both of you want what's best for the children. That common ground shouldn't be lost, even if you disagree about what best looks like in practice. Maxwell nodded tightly, studying Daniel more carefully than he had in years. At 38, the construction foreman looked healthier and more confident than Maxwell had ever seen him. Clear-eyed, well-dressed, carrying himself with the assurance of a man who had rebuilt his life from the ground up. It would have been easier if he'd still been the volatile, struggling addict Maxwell had first encountered. I appreciate you meeting with me before I talk to the kids, Daniel said, breaking the silence. This doesn't have to be adversarial, Maxwell. We've made co-parenting work for 4 years. Co-parenting across the same city is very different from co-parenting across the country, Maxwell pointed out. And in our current arrangement, the children's primary residence and stability haven't been disrupted. Daniel leaned forward. I understand your concern, but kids are adaptable, especially when they're surrounded by love and security. Rebecca and I can provide that in Chicago. She's an incredible woman, Maxwell. Patient, kind, great with kids. She teaches 3rd grade, and Emma is so excited about having siblings. Have you considered that Lily and Tommy might not share that excitement? Maxwell countered. That they might not want to leave their schools, their friends, their home? Of course I have considered it, Daniel replied, a hint of defensiveness entering his voice. I'm their father. I've spent the last 4 years trying to rebuild their trust, to be worthy of them. This isn't a decision I made lightly. Dr. Lowell intervened gently. Perhaps we should discuss the practical aspects of what Daniel is proposing, and then consider how it might impact the children emotionally. Over the next hour, Daniel outlined his plan in detail. The house in Chicago with bedrooms already designated for each child. The highly rated public schools in their district. The nearby parks, the diverse neighborhood, the extended family Rebecca offered. Grandparents who lived nearby, cousins close to Tommy's age. The stability of Daniel's job and income. The careful transition timeline he proposed. Maxwell listened with growing apprehension, recognizing that from an objective standpoint, Daniel's plan was reasonable, even thoughtful. He wasn't suggesting an abrupt change, but a gradual transition. He had considered the children's educational and emotional needs. He was offering a legitimate family structure, 2 parents, a step-sibling, extended family connections that Maxwell, with his distant relationships to his own relatives, couldn't provide. And what would my role be in this scenario? Maxwell asked finally, the question that had been weighing on him since Daniel's call. Daniel seemed prepared for this. You would always be welcome to visit. We have a guest room that would be yours whenever you want to come. And the kids could spend summers with you in New York, school breaks, holidays we could alternate. He hesitated. I know it's not the same as what you have now, but you'd still be an important part of their lives. The proposal was generous on its face, more accommodating than many divorced parents managed. But to Maxwell, who had built his life around daily involvement with Lily and Tommy, it represented an unbearable diminishment. Summer visits and occasional weekends couldn't replace helping with homework, attending school events, the quiet conversations before bedtime, the ordinary moments that constituted real family life. And legally, Maxwell pressed, would you be seeking to terminate the guardianship? This was the crux of the matter, whether Daniel intended to completely remove Maxwell's legal standing in relation to the children. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. My lawyer advised me that would be cleaner, yes, but, he added quickly, seeing Maxwell's expression, I'm open to alternatives, some kind of shared legal arrangement maybe. I don't want to cut you out, Maxwell. That's not my goal here. Dr. Lowell interjected thoughtfully. It might be helpful to consider this from the children's perspective. What would each of them lose and gain in this scenario? Lily, as the older child with more established connections here, might experience this differently than Tommy. The observation was astute. At 12, Lily had spent half her life in Maxwell's care, had established meaningful friendships and academic achievements at her school. Tommy, at 5, was more adaptable, with fewer enduring attachments outside their immediate family circle. Lily would resist the move more strongly, Maxwell acknowledged. She values stability and predictability, especially after everything she's been through. Daniel nodded in agreement. That's why the transition period is important. Give her time to visit Chicago, get to know Rebecca and Emma, see the new school before making any permanent change. And what if she simply doesn't want to go? Maxwell challenged. What if, after all your careful planning, Lily makes it clear she wants to stay in New York? Would you separate her from Tommy? Force her against her will? What exactly is your plan then, Daniel? The questions carried the weight of Maxwell's deepest fear, that Daniel's parental rights would ultimately trump Lily's wishes, that her voice would be lost in legal proceedings focused on adult prerogatives rather than children's well-being. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. I would hope that you, as someone who cares about her, wouldn't encourage her to resist, that you would help her see the positives of our family coming back together. Our family. Maxwell repeated the word, stinging. Despite all his involvement, all his love and care, in Daniel's view, he remained an outsider, someone who had temporarily filled a gap that the real father was now reclaiming. Dr. Lowell intervened again, her voice gentle but firm. I think we're approaching this as an either-or situation, when perhaps there are alternatives worth exploring. Both of you clearly love these children deeply. Is there a compromise that might preserve their connections to both of you and both cities? What exactly did you have in mind? Daniel asked, while Maxwell listened attentively. For instance, what if the children remained primarily in New York through the end of the school year, giving everyone time to adjust to the idea of change? During that time, regular visits to Chicago could help them build relationships with Rebecca and Emma. Then perhaps a trial summer in Chicago, with Maxwell visiting frequently before any permanent decisions are made. She looked between them. The goal would be minimizing disruption while honoring the importance of both of you in their lives. It wasn't perfect, but it offered time for Maxwell to demonstrate the depth of the children's attachment to their life in New York, time for Daniel to reconsider whether uprooting them was truly necessary or whether his new family could expand to include the existing arrangements. I could work with that approach, Maxwell said cautiously. Assuming the children's preferences are given serious weight in the final decision. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. That seems reasonable. But I want to be clear. I'm not abandoning the idea of having them with me in Chicago. I'm just willing to make the transition more gradual. Then I think we have the beginnings of a path forward, Dr. Lowell concluded. One that acknowledges the validity of both your roles while prioritizing the children's emotional well-being. As they prepared to leave, Daniel pulled Maxwell aside. There's something else you should know. I've invited Rebecca and Emma to fly in tomorrow. I want the kids to meet them before we have any serious discussions about Chicago. Maxwell masked his surprise. That seems sudden. It's been planned for weeks, Daniel countered. Before I called you about the move, I was going to introduce them as my fiancée and her daughter, nothing more at first. But now that you know everything. Last, we should still proceed carefully with the children, Maxwell advised. Meet Rebecca and Emma first, build those relationships gradually before mentioning any potential changes. Daniel agreed, and they parted with a tentative plan for dinner the following evening, a first step in what would inevitably be a complex negotiation about the children's future. Back at the penthouse, Maxwell found himself wandering into Lily and Tommy's rooms while they were still at school, taking in the evidence of their established lives. Lily's bookshelves filled with novels and science texts, the debate team trophies, the framed photos of her with school friends, Tommy's elaborate Lego constructions, the dinosaur collection arranged by prehistoric period, Lily's influence, the growth chart on his doorframe marking his progress since age 2. The thought of these rooms standing empty, visited only during school breaks and summer months, was almost unbearable. Yet Maxwell forced himself to consider Daniel's perspective. A father who had fought his way back from addiction and failure, who wanted the chance to fully parent his children, to integrate them into his new life and family. If their positions had been reversed, wouldn't Maxwell have wanted the same opportunity? The question haunted him as he prepared for the children's return from school, determined to maintain normalcy despite the turmoil he felt. When they arrived, full of stories about their day, he listened attentively, asked appropriate questions, helped with homework, and supervised Tommy's bath time, all the ordinary routines that had become the foundation of their life together. It was only after Tommy was asleep and Lily was reading in her room that Maxwell finally broached the subject of their father's visit. "Dad's bringing someone special to meet you tomorrow," he explained, sitting on the edge of Lily's bed. "Her name is Rebecca. She's a teacher and she has a daughter named Emma who's 8. Lily's perceptiveness was immediate. Is she his girlfriend? Fiancée, actually. They're planning to get married. Lily absorbed this information with characteristic thoughtfulness. Is that why he's coming early? To tell us he's getting married? Partly, Maxwell answered carefully. He wants you to meet Rebecca and Emma, to get to know them. She studied his face. There's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling me. Maxwell sighed. Lily had always been able to read him too well. Your dad wants to talk about some possible changes in the future. But for now, the important thing is just meeting Rebecca and Emma, seeing how you all get along. What kind of changes? Lily pressed, setting her book aside. Is he moving back to New York? No, he's staying in Chicago. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? Tomorrow is just about meeting them, having dinner together. The rest can be discussed later, with no pressure or rush. Lily looked skeptical but nodded. Okay, but promise you'll tell me everything eventually. No treating me like a little kid who can't handle the truth. I promise, Maxwell agreed, recognizing the echo of their earliest interactions in her insistence on honesty. No matter what happens, you and Tommy are my priority, always. After saying goodnight, Maxwell retreated to his study, where he spent hours researching family law, guardianship rights, and custody arrangements. The more he read, the clearer it became that his legal position was tenuous at best. If Daniel pursued full custody, with his demonstrated sobriety and stability, courts would likely favor the biological parent, unless Maxwell could prove such an arrangement would be harmful to the children. Yet the prospect of a legal battle filled him with dread. Not only would it potentially traumatize Lily and Tommy, forcing them to declare loyalties and preferences, but it might irrevocably damage the civil co-parenting relationship he and Daniel had managed to maintain. And if he lost, which seemed likely given the legal precedents, the children might be removed from his life even more completely than Daniel was currently proposing. There had to be another way. As midnight approached, Maxwell found himself standing at the window of his study, gazing out at the city lights. In the reflection of the glass, He caught sight of the framed photo on his desk, Lily and Tommy at the beach last summer, their faces alight with joy as they built an elaborate sandcastle. The image captured everything he stood to lose. But it also reminded him of something essential, that his love for these children had never been about possession or control. From the moment he had given his black card to a starving 8-year-old girl, his journey had been one of learning what true wealth meant. And true wealth, he had discovered, wasn't about holding tight, but about giving freely. What if the greatest gift he could offer now was supporting Lily and Tommy's relationship with their father, even if it meant sacrificing his own daily presence in their lives? The thought was almost physically painful. Yet Maxwell couldn't escape the possibility that his resistance to Daniel's plan stemmed partly from his own needs rather than what might ultimately be best for the children. As he finally went to bed, exhausted but no closer to clarity, Maxwell found himself remembering something Sarah had said during her final days. Love isn't about what you get, it's about what you give. And sometimes the hardest gift is letting go. And tomorrow would bring the meeting with Rebecca and Emma, the first step in a journey whose destination remained uncertain. But whatever path ultimately emerged, Maxwell was determined that it would be guided by one principle alone: what would truly give Lily and Tommy the best chance at happiness and wholeness, even if that came at the cost of his own. 5 years later. "Dad! Where did you put my debate notes? I can't find them anywhere." Lily's voice echoed through the penthouse, the familiar mix of teenage exasperation and pre-tournament anxiety that Maxwell had learned to navigate with patience. "Check the kitchen counter," he called back, straightening his tie as he prepared for the day ahead. "I saw them there last night when you were practicing your arguments." At 17, Lily had grown into a poised young woman, her academic achievements and debate championships accumulating alongside the quiet compassion that had always been her hallmark. Her college applications were due next month, with early decision already submitted to Columbia, her top choice, partly because it would allow her to remain in New York. Tommy bounded into Maxwell's bedroom without knocking, a 10-year-old whirlwind of energy despite the early hour. "Can Emma sleep over next weekend?" "Dad said it's okay with him and Rebecca if it's okay with you." "Of course," Maxwell agreed easily. "We can set up the guest room for her. Does she still like those space documentaries you two watched last time?" "Yeah, and she's bringing her telescope. We're going to try to see Saturn's rings from the terrace." Tommy's enthusiasm for astronomy had developed during his summer visits to Chicago, where less light pollution offered better stargazing opportunities than Manhattan. Maxwell smiled at his excitement. "Sounds like a plan. Now, do you have everything packed for school? Mrs. Chen will be here in 20 minutes. The morning routine continued with its comfortable familiarity. Breakfast together at the kitchen island, last-minute homework checks, reminders about after-school activities. The rhythm of their family life had evolved over the years, adapting to changing circumstances while preserving its essential foundation of stability and care. The compromise reached 5 years earlier had taken a form none of them had initially envisioned, after Lily's adamant refusal to leave New York permanently, supported by Dr. Lowell's professional assessment of the potential psychological impact, and Tommy's tearful confusion at the prospect of choosing between his two homes, Daniel and Maxwell had been forced to reconsider their positions. The solution, proposed by Rebecca during a particularly tense family meeting, had emerged from her experience as a child of divorce. The children would maintain their primary residence in New York with Maxwell, while spending extended time in Chicago during summers and school breaks. Daniel and Rebecca would visit New York monthly, staying in a small apartment they purchased specifically for this purpose, allowing them to participate in the children's regular activities and school events. It wasn't perfect. There were logistical challenges. occasional conflicts over scheduling, moments of tension when parenting approaches diverged. But over time, what had begun as an uneasy compromise had evolved into a functioning, even flourishing family system. Expanded rather than divided, with 4 adults collaboratively supporting 2 children who gradually became 3 as Emma was integrated into their unconventional family structure. "Did you sign my permission slip for the museum trip?" Lily asked, gathering her debate materials. "It's due today." "Already in your humanities folder," Maxwell confirmed, "along with the check for the senior class fundraiser." She smiled, the expression momentarily transforming her serious face. "Always one step ahead." "I try," he replied, returning her smile. "Good luck at the tournament tonight. I'll be there by 6, front row, as usual." "You don't have to come to every single one, you know," she said, though her tone belied the words. "I'm sure you have more important CEO things to do." "Nothing more important than watching you demolish the competition," Maxwell assured her. "Besides, Daniel and Rebecca are flying in specifically to see you compete. We wouldn't miss it." The mention of her father brought a different smile to Lily's face, one that reflected the healing of old wounds, the building of new trust. Her relationship with Daniel had deepened over the years, evolving from cautious reconnection to genuine attachment as he proved consistently and reliably that his commitment to sobriety and fatherhood was unwavering. "They're staying the whole weekend, right?" Tommy confirmed eagerly. "Dad promised we'd go to that new Science Museum exhibit on Sunday?" "That's the plan," Maxwell nodded. "And Rebecca mentioned something about tickets to that Broadway show you've been wanting to see, Lily." But the ease with which they discussed these shared parenting arrangements still occasionally struck Maxwell as remarkable, given the conflict that had once seemed inevitable. The path to their current stability had not been without challenges. Daniel's initial resistance to the compromise, Maxwell's struggle to trust that his role wouldn't be diminished, the children's confusion as they adjusted to expanded family boundaries. But the adults' collective commitment to putting the children first had ultimately prevailed over pride and possessiveness. Maxwell and Daniel had gradually moved from wary cooperation to genuine respect, while Maxwell and Rebecca had formed an unexpected alliance based on their shared educational values and complementary approaches to the children's emotional needs. As the children departed for school, Maxwell took a moment to appreciate the quiet of the penthouse, a luxury that would soon disappear as Daniel, Rebecca, and Emma arrived that afternoon, filling the space with the cheerful chaos of their blended family gatherings. His phone chimed with a message from Daniel, "Flight on time. Rebecca says to ask if you need us to bring anything for dinner." The easy domesticity of the question brought a smile to Maxwell's face as he replied, "Just yourselves. Everything else handled. See you at 3. Heading to his home office, Maxwell spent the morning focused on foundation work rather than corporate matters. Reed Technologies continued to thrive under the leadership of the executive team he had assembled, allowing him to devote most of his attention to the Reed Foundation's expanding initiatives supporting children in crisis, single-parent families, and addiction recovery programs. The Foundation's work had been profoundly shaped by his personal experience, its programs designed to address the gaps and challenges he had witnessed firsthand. The Black Card Initiative, named in wry tribute to the experiment that had changed his life, provided emergency financial support to families facing medical crises, helping prevent the devastating choice between treatment and basic necessities that Sarah had initially faced. Around noon, Maxwell's assistant interrupted his work. "Mr. Reed, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent." Maxwell checked his schedule with a frown. "Who is it?" "A Mrs. Eleanor Jenkins. She says it's about the black card story in the Times." Maxwell's confusion cleared instantly. The profile of the Reed Foundation, published in the New York Times the previous Sunday, had included, for the first time publicly, the full story of how he had met Lily and Tommy. The impromptu experiment with his black credit card, the unexpected choice made by a hungry 8-year-old, the transformation it had catalyzed in his own life. The article had generated significant attention, with donations to the foundation increasing dramatically. But Maxwell hadn't anticipated personal visits from strangers. Send her in, he decided, curious despite his busy schedule. Eleanor Jenkins proved to be an elegant woman in her 70s, composed but visibly emotional as she entered his office. "Mr. Reed, thank you for seeing me without an appointment," she began, accepting his offered handshake. "I read the article about your foundation, about how you met those children. I had to come." "I'm glad the story resonated with you," Maxwell replied, gesturing for her to sit. "The foundation's work is very personal to me." "It's personal to me too," she said, opening her handbag and removing an old, worn leather wallet. From it, she extracted a faded black credit card that instantly captured Maxwell's attention. "Because 60 years ago, someone did the same thing for me." Maxwell stared at the card, then at her face, momentarily speechless. "I was 7, she continued, her voice steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes. "My mother was ill. My father had abandoned us. We were living in a room above a restaurant in Chicago. The owner, a man named Joseph Adler, found me searching through the garbage bins for food. Instead of chasing me away, he gave me this card and told me I could buy anything I wanted." The parallels were so striking that Maxwell felt a chill down his spine. "And what did you choose?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Medicine for my mother, and food, real food, not just scraps." She smiled at the memory. "Mr. Adler said he'd expected me to buy toys or candy. He seemed surprised by my choice." "Just as I was surprised by Lily," Maxwell acknowledged. "What happened after that?" "Mr. Adler helped us. He found my mother proper medical care, gave me a job in his restaurant when I was old enough. He put me through school, all the way to college. He changed our lives completely." She ran her fingers over the faded card. "I've kept this all these years as a reminder that generosity can appear in the most unexpected moments." Maxwell was deeply moved by her story. "Did you stay in touch with him, with Mr. Adler?" "Until he died 20 years ago," she nodded. "He became like family to us. I named my son Joseph after him." She hesitated, then continued. "When I read your story, about giving your card to that little girl, about how it changed your life, I felt like I was reading about Mr. Adler, like somehow his spirit of generosity had continued through you. I never knew there was someone else who'd done this," Maxwell admitted, genuinely astonished by the coincidence. If it was a coincidence. The idea just came to me in that moment. "Perhaps some ideas exist in the universe, waiting for the right people to discover them," Eleanor suggested. "Or perhaps we're just part of a chain, passing forward what was once given to us, even if we don't consciously realize it." She placed the faded black card on his desk. "I'd like to donate to your foundation, Mr. Reed, substantially. My husband and I built a successful business over the years, and we've been looking for the right cause to support in our estate planning." Maxwell was touched by the gesture, but even more by the remarkable symmetry of their stories. "I'd be honored, but more than that, I'd love for you to meet Lily and Tommy. Lily especially would appreciate knowing there's this precedent, I suppose, this connection across generations." "I'd like that very much," Eleanor agreed. After arranging for her to join them at Lily's debate tournament that evening, Maxwell saw Eleanor out, still marveling at the extraordinary coincidence of their parallel experiences. Returning to his desk, he picked up a framed photograph, the most recent family portrait taken at Christmas. It showed an unconventional but unmistakably happy family. Maxwell and Daniel standing side by side without awkwardness, Rebecca with her arm linked through her husband's, the three children front and center, Lily tall and poised, Tommy grinning widely, Emma nestled between them with the easy comfort of genuine sibling affection. The journey to this harmony had not been easy. There had been difficult conversations, tears, moments of tension when old wounds threatened to reopen. But the shared commitment to the children's well-being had ultimately transcended individual pride or possessiveness. Maxwell's phone rang, Lily calling between classes. "Hey, Dad," she greeted him, the title she had gradually, organically begun using for both Maxwell and Daniel over the years. "Just checking you remembered to RSVP for Parents' Night next month. Both you and biological Dad need to sign up separately." "Already done," Maxwell assured her, smiling at her characteristic attention to detail. "And Rebecca registered too, since she wanted to talk to your English teacher about that college recommendation letter." "Perfect," Lily approved. "Gotta run to AP Physics. Love you." "Love you too," Maxwell replied, the words still filling him with quiet wonder, even after all these years. As he prepared to leave for Lily's debate tournament, Maxwell's thoughts returned to Eleanor Jenkins and her remarkable story. There was something profoundly moving about the idea that his impulsive experiment with Lily had unknowingly echoed an act of kindness from decades earlier, that perhaps such moments of transformation were part of a larger pattern, connecting strangers across time and circumstance. The black card that had started it all remained in his desk drawer, preserved as a reminder of how a single decision could alter the course of multiple lives. Beside it now lay a newer document, Lily's early acceptance letter to Columbia University, where she planned to study law with a focus on child advocacy, inspired by her own experiences. Driving to the tournament, Maxwell reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 9 years, from that rainy February night when he first noticed a small, hungry girl outside his restaurant to this moment, heading to cheer for that same girl, now a confident young woman on the cusp of adulthood, with her blended family united in support. What had begun as a cynical test of human nature had evolved into the most profound lesson of his life, that true wealth had nothing to do with black cards or billion-dollar companies. It lay in the connections formed when you opened your heart to others, in the family you chose and who chose you in return, in the legacy of kindness that could span generations. As he parked and headed into the school auditorium, Maxwell spotted Daniel and Rebecca already saving seats in the front row, Tommy and Emma between them, all wearing the team colors in support of Lily. They waved him over, making space in their family circle. Maxwell joined them, complete in a way that money alone could never have made him. The black card experiment had failed spectacularly in its original purpose. Instead, it had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, revealing the true nature of wealth in the most unexpected way possible, through the wisdom of a hungry child who chose medicine over toys, compassion over self-interest, and in doing so taught a billionaire the true meaning of riches. As Lily took her place at the podium, her gaze finding her unusual but devoted family in the audience, Maxwell felt a profound sense of gratitude for the failed experiment that had succeeded in all the ways that truly mattered.